So, addiction is a big word. A lot of us don't want to admit we're addicted to anything. And when it comes to food, there's a lot of verbiage in diet culture about being a food addict or saying you can't help your obesity because it's a disease or you're addicted and there's no hope. So, there can be all this verbiage around it that's very negative and very defeating. But understanding that you're addicted to junk food is your first step to freedom. So, being willing to look at this and accept the fact that you are addicted is going to determine if this works for you or not. So, keep an open mind. I know it's a big word. Now, I want to remind you that you had very well meaning people in your life as a child and as you grew up. People who made decisions for you about what kind of food was presented to you, how much, and when. So, you have a story around food and sweets and junk food that you were passive in, your first story with foods. And so, you were creating habits before you had any idea what was going on. For example, if you had dinner with your family and every single day there was a treat after dinner and it was you can't have the treat unless you finish your vegetables, that taught you that food is a reward. Or if after baseball practice you always went to ice cream, that taught you that food is connected to celebrations. And you may find yourself leaving a ball field, or maybe you're a parent now and your kids have baseball and you say, I don't know how to just go home after a baseball game. We always go to the Dairy Queen. That's a pattern. That's an addiction. That's not a horrible, heinous, terrible, life changing addiction like drugs or alcohol, but it's an addiction to the feeling of fun flavors in association with something. So, addiction happens because of those patterns that we are passive in, and also because of the molecular structure of processed foods. So, sugary foods, processed foods, manufactured foods, they are created by big food companies who use big food marketing, who understand a lot about what happens in your brain when you eat certain combinations of fats and carbs. Now, when you were born, the first thing that you ate was breast milk or formula, and it was very sweet. There was a 2-1 ratio, fat and carbs, in that breast milk. And it offered soothing comfort to your body. You were feeling vulnerable, remember? You were feeling all of a sudden this flopping around, I'm no longer tight and warm, and now I'm hungry, and now you're given something that's sweet. There's an emotional connection from the moment you're born. And big food and big food manufacturing and big food marketing know this. They know this better than any of us. And so, foods that you get addicted to along the way, starting with your breakfast cereal, starting with Pop Tarts, and even pizza and burgers, things that are savory. You know, McDonald's has sugar on their French fries. It's all designed to get you to buy it again. They don't make money if you have one cookie and then the rest goes to waste and you throw it away and you don't buy it again for 6 months. They make money when you buy the package, you can't resist it, you eat it, and you come back for more. In fact, you know the marketing slogan for Lay's potato chips? Bet you can't eat just one? Yeah, I bet you can't. I bet they were designed that way. You're a pawn in a game. You're a pawn in a game. These foods are addictive and they're designed to be addictive. So, the first thing that I want you to get from what I'm saying is that this is not your fault, that these foods react to your dopamine centers in your brain. Dopamine. Dopamine is a feel good chemical that's released in your brain, and it's released when you have these highly palatable foods and processed sugar. So, when you're feeling sad, of course, it's wonderful to have an ice cream cone with some Oreos because all of a sudden those pleasure centers light up like a Christmas tree. The problem is, it's an artificial high from a food that you put in your body, it's processed, and 18 minutes later, the dopamine is released and gone. And all you're left with is the feeling in your body of having eaten that food. And then probably the shame of having compulsively eaten that food when you know that that is not helping your body and you don't want to eat it. The issue with the shame here is that you're smart and you know good logic. And you know that this shouldn't be put in your body in this, but you find yourself doing it anyway. And so, of course, now we feel bad. We feel shame. I know I'm not supposed to, and I keep doing it. Now I'm in this shame loop. What happens when you feel shame? You feel sad. What did we just say we do when we feel sad? We eat. We eat things that trigger that dopamine, and now we're on the roller coaster. We're addicted. I'm addicted. I'm happy to admit that I am Kristen and I'm addicted to sugar and junk food. But I'm also happy to say I'm free from ever choosing them ever again because I understand what's going on. Now, you can also understand this so deeply that the desire to eat those foods are gone. Dopamine is great. The great thing about dopamine is that you can get it without eating. So when you're feeling low, there are a lot of things that you can do to feel good, to release that dopamine. So for instance, why do we hug people? When we hug people, that dopamine is released. We get all these feel good chemicals. Our heart rate regulates, maybe matches with the person if we hug them long enough. And that's a high. And guess what? There's no low. You don't feel bad later. You don't fall lower than you were before the hug. It's a real high. It's a real soothing balm to your actual soul. The food gives you a dopamine high that hits your brain, your physical brain, makes you feel awesome for a little while. But then guess what? Your heart is still hurting. Your soul is still hurting when it rolls off. But now your body is craving another hit of the thing just to get back to where you started from. So now a Snicker bar is not about that high. It's about, this is going to give me that dopamine high, and then I'm going to crash, and I'm going to need more to just get back to baseline. And then once I get back to baseline, I got to have something to make me feel good, so I got to have more. And now that crash is bigger, and now I got to have more. This is why when we open a bag of chips and we have a couple bites, and then a couple bites more, why we end up looking later and seeing the bag is empty. Because we're chasing the flavor of the first bite, and we're chasing that good feeling we had the minute we opened it. And guess what? You're going to go to the bottom of the bag over and over again, and it's not there. But you can get that joy, that thing you're actually looking for, so many other places. We're going to talk about strategies of how to confront all of the reasons you emotionally eat with a solution that actually lasts. But for purposes of this addiction topic, it's important that you understand the cycle of the dopamine response from food and what happens in your body. This is why the desire to eat a donut can just go away. Because when you're feeling sad, or maybe you're feeling super happy, and now you look at the donut and say, yes, that tastes really good. But then I'm going to hit a low. I don't want the low. Do I want the high? Yeah, I sure like the taste of that donut. But now I also know what that donut tastes like. And it tastes like the loss of a donut plus the loss of more donuts. I'm going to have so much of this in order to get back to where I am right now. Maybe I don't want the donut. Now I see it for what it really is. That's freedom from desire. So whatever it is you mostly struggle with food, that dopamine response is so powerful. And then it increases, that addiction increases, so the withdrawal is what you end up needing to fix. The craving is not for the donut anymore, the Snicker bar. It's to relieve withdrawal. So this cycle is like putting on a pair of shoes that's tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, just for the relief of taking them off. And it's not the 25th Dorito or the second donut that's the problem. It's the first one. So if you understand what the first one represents, that it's going to take you on a low, and then you're going to need more to get back up to just where you are. That's the lie of the donut. That's the lie of the sugar. That's the lie of the marketing companies that show you happy, healthy, thin, fit people eating Magnum ice cream bars, walking down the street without a care in the world. They're not telling you the whole story, but you know the whole story. It's why you're here. So it's important to say, honestly, I'm addicted. My body is addicted. When I eat these foods, I can't help what happens in my brain and then what happens in my body. Therefore, I'm going to not choose these foods. Now, the withdrawal from not eating these foods, it takes a little while. It takes a little while to stop the cravings because of the addiction, but it's very short-lived. The longer you look at those foods and understand that your desire is not there, they do not promise you a real high, and you can resist that little urge over time, that desire will be gone. I'm proof of that. I can testify to that. And so can tens, hundreds of thousands of other people who have understood the level of addiction, what dopamine does to them. and what they actually get out of digging into things to soothe an emotion that don't actually soothe an emotion, but that bring a negative emotion with them. If you ask me to hold your cigarette for you, I'm not going to take a drag. It's going to make me cough. It's probably going to make me have an asthma attack. It tastes gross. I don't have any desire to have it. It's disgusting. Now, if someone hands me a donut, which used to be my vice, I look at it and say, oh, it's so pretty. The taste of it is good on the tongue. But I will not stop at one donut. I will want another one. And then I will have to face that decision of, wow, I have all this in my body. I don't feel good. Sugar makes me feel terrible. I feel bad that I ate it at all because now I feel worse than I did before. Now I have to burn off this sugar. And now what am I going to do? I'm going to feel bad. And now I have to wait until this withdrawal feeling, this craving goes away. Again, no, thank you. You can keep your cigarette. You can keep your donut. You can keep your heroin. You can keep all the things that don't offer me actually what I need. Do you actually believe that you can get to that level of freedom? Because if you start believing it, you can have it. Start to feel relieved right now that that's in your future, that elation, that joy, that you can walk into a party and instead of saying, I can't have the cake, to say, I'm so glad I don't have to have the cake to have fun. That's what's waiting for you. It's freedom. It's freedom from desire from these foods and freedom from addiction.